My daughter sold my late husband's classic car, the one he spent 20 years restoring, just to take her husband to Paris. When I found the garage empty that morning, I didn't scream. I just took out my notebook and started writing everything down. A few hours later, the dealer called and said, "Ma'am, your husband left something for you in the glove box." That was when the real story began. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're watching from. The morning air was still cool when I stepped into the kitchen. Light from the desert sky filtered through the blinds, painting the tile in soft orange. The coffee I'd poured 10 minutes earlier had already gone cold, but I didn't mind. Silence was my favorite company now, the kind that hummed low, like an old friend sitting beside you, asking nothing. When I turned toward the window, I noticed the garage door was open. That never happened. Byron used to check it twice before bed, his way of keeping the world in order. My chest tightened, a quiet ripple spreading from my heart to my fingertips. I set down the mug, listening for any sound outside, nothing but the faint whir of the air conditioner and a wind chime tinkling somewhere beyond the porch. I slipped my feet into my slippers and walked across the small rock yard. Each step crunched against the gravel, sharp and dry. The sky was the color of a soft apricot. The sun had barely crested over South Mountain. I paused at the threshold of the garage. The space was empty. Byron's car, our car, was gone. For a moment, I thought I'd stepped into the wrong place. The oil stain on the concrete was still there, a dark oval like a scar. The smell of metal and dust hung in the air, mixed with a trace of the engine cleaner he used every Saturday for 20 years. Every wrench, every screwdriver, every socket set was arranged just as he'd left them. Only the heartbeat of that car was missing. My hand brushed over the red toolbox, the corner of his workbench, the little radio that still had a sticker from the hospital where we met. It wasn't theft, I heard myself say softly. It was erasure. I didn't cry, not yet. Old habits die hard. In the ICU, you learn that panic wastes oxygen. You breathe, you observe, you document. So I looked carefully. Nothing broken, no forced entry, just absence. Then the sound of heels clicked behind me. "Morning, Mom." Jody's voice, bright, practiced, like someone starting a meeting. She walked in, holding the garage remote. The shimmer of her perfume, citrus and money, filled the doorway. "Why's the door open?" I asked. "Oh, right," she said, placing the remote on the kitchen island like a trophy. "I sold it. The car. My husband wanted Paris. So I sold it. You'll get over it." The words landed one by one, cold and deliberate. I kept my eyes on the floor, breathing through my nose the way I used to before inserting a central line. My pulse ticked at my wrist. "You sold your father's car?" "Correction," she said with a shrug. "It was sitting here collecting dust. You don't even drive." I looked at her, not angry, not yet. "Why didn't you ask me?" She gave a short laugh. "Because you would have said no." Then she turned, hair swinging, and walked out the front door. The silence after her departure pressed against my ears. I stood there for a full minute before moving. Her car started outside, tires crunching the gravel, and then the sound faded into the distance. On the counter lay a folded paper, travel agency logo, the words Paris Deposit circled in pen. I didn't touch it. I simply noted the time. 7:05 m. "Document first," I murmured. "React later." I picked up my notebook from the table, the one Byron had used for our grocery lists. I wrote, "Garage empty, 6:47. Ah! Jody confessed. Keep calm. My fingers trembled only once. Then I set the pen down and walked back to the garage. The air was warmer now, A thin shaft of light cut across the workbench, landing on a brown leather journal. Byron's. The one he used to log every hour he spent on that car. I hadn't opened it since the funeral. I rested my palm on the cover. "All right, Byron," I whispered. "Let's see what you left me." But I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I turned off the light, shut the door, and placed the remote into a drawer. Back in the kitchen, the cold coffee waited for me. I rinsed the cup, checked my pulse again, steady, and leaned against the counter. The phone buzzed once, vibrating against the tile. An unknown number glowed on the screen. I hesitated, then picked it up. "Ma'am?" a man's voice said. "This is Ramsey from Graves Classic Auto." The phone kept ringing. I hesitated for 3 beats before picking up, expecting another telemarketer. A man's voice, polite and steady, said, "Ma'am, this is Ramsey from Graves Classic Auto. I hope I'm not disturbing you." I froze, holding the phone tighter. He mentioned a vehicle recently delivered under Byron's name, my husband's name. 2 years gone, but still on the title. Ramsey continued, "It looks like the paperwork isn't fully transferred. Could you come by? There's something your husband left inside the glove box." I agreed before my voice could tremble. When I hung up, the phone left a faint ring mark on the counter beside Jody's Paris receipt. I drove across Phoenix with the windows half open, desert wind curling through the cabin. The morning sun was merciless already, and the mountains looked washed in white heat. I passed gas stations and car washes Byron used to favor. My old sedan rattled when I hit a bump, a reminder of his endless lectures about tire pressure. I rehearsed the right tone, calm, factual, not sentimental. Nurses learn to sound detached when someone dies. That skill doesn't vanish after retirement. At the dealership, air conditioning blasted cold air into my bones. Ramsey, a tall man with a sunburned neck, shook my hand gently. "Mrs. Trent, thank you for coming." He led me past rows of cars until we reached Byron's project, a deep green 1967 Camaro, gleaming under showroom lights. My chest tightened. "We found this," Ramsey said, pointing to an envelope tucked inside the glove box. "It's addressed to you. It says, 'Only if sold. I thought you should have it.'" I took the envelope carefully. My name was written in Byron's firm script, black ink slightly faded. I didn't open it. "Thank you, Mr. Ramsey," I said. He nodded with quiet respect, perhaps guessing more than I could say aloud. At the coffee counter, I checked my phone for the ride notification. Instead, a message from my neighbor popped up. "Maura, is this your daughter?" I tapped the link and nearly dropped the phone. Jody and Dylan were in a reel, laughing before a glittering Eiffel Tower filter. The caption read, "Sold Dad's old project. Hello, Paris." Hearts and likes swarmed beneath it. I caught a salesman's glance, the sympathy in his eyes, and wished he'd look away. The air smelled like burnt espresso and shame. My fingers itched to delete the video, but I only turned off the screen. I signed the visitor log, thanked Ramsey again, and walked out into the heat. My reflection in the glass door looked steady, though my stomach churned. 40 years saving other people's lives, I thought, and my own child deletes mine with a post. I placed Byron's envelope on the passenger seat and rested my hand over it like a pulse check. The blinker ticked softly on the drive home, steady, mechanical, mercifully predictable, at home. I opened my laptop and saved the Paris reel to a private folder. Evidence, not emotion. The timestamp, link, and file name went into a neat column in my notes. Old habits, charting, recording, preserving data. Then I sat at Byron's desk and placed the sealed envelope beside his work journal. My hands felt cold. "The patient survives when we control the bleeding," I whispered. A rule from the ICU that suddenly applied to family. The afternoon light stretched across the room. The envelope glowed faintly, daring me to open it. I stared at it until the edges blurred, then picked up my pen instead. Tomorrow, check deposit date on travel receipt. My handwriting was calm, like a vital sign stabilized after chaos. The envelope stayed closed, patient as a wound not yet stitched. The envelope sat there under the fading light, whispering that it was time to open it. The envelope sat on Byron's desk all night, untouched. I woke before the sun, made a cup of coffee I barely tasted, and finally broke the seal. Inside was a single page written in his neat, mechanical handwriting and a small silver key tagged Box 447, Glendale Trust Bank. Oh, my breath caught. Byron always prepared for everything, down to spare light bulbs and backup keys. I should have expected this. Yet seeing my name in his familiar loops made the air thicken, as if his voice might still fill the room. I sat there listening to the tick of the wall clock, the slow rhythm that had marked every shift change in my nursing years. The house still smelled faintly of motor oil and lemon polish. His handwriting read, "If you're reading this, it means something went wrong with the car. Don't panic. Just trust what I've arranged." I folded the letter once, slipped the key into my palm, and whispered, "I'll follow your instructions. Byron, like always." The drive to Glendale took less than 40 minutes. The desert already bright with morning light. The mountains looked etched from bronze, every shadow sharp. I passed the diner where we used to stop after church, the same gas station where Byron once laughed at me for pumping diesel into the wrong nozzle. That memory, his laughter, wasn't cruel. It was soft, teasing, alive. The hum of the tires steadied me. My mind clicked through what I needed to do next. ID, proof of relationship, death certificate copy. The nurse in me was still procedural, efficient. My heart lagged behind, slower to understand that even in death, Byron was still protecting me. Even in dying, he did paperwork, I murmured aloud. Inside the quiet vault room, I inserted the key into box 447. The latch released with a clean metallic click. Inside sat a folded document, a USB drive, and a fob tag bearing the car's VIN number. The scent of old paper and metal hit me hard, like the garage in our first home. The document was a codicil, notarized 2 years ago. Its language was unmistakably Byron's, direct, concise, fair. It read, "Ownership of the restored vehicle remains with Maura until consented in writing. No transfer authorized without her signature." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Jody and Dellen had sold something that was never theirs. My eyes burned, but no tears fell. Instead, a strange calm washed over me, the kind you feel before a medical emergency, when instinct overrides panic. "He protected me even from our daughter," I whispered, tracing his signature, back home. The USB blinked to life as I plugged it into Byron's old laptop. The files opened to neat folders labeled Repair Logs, Photos, and one named For Maura. The video played automatically. Byron sat in the garage, sunlight across his shoulders, the car behind him half covered by a tarp. "If you're watching this, love, I'm probably gone," he said, voice steady. "Don't let them guilt you into giving away what's yours. The dealership knows the sale requires your consent. Ramsey has the paperwork. Keep it safe." His tone was practical, not sentimental, as if he were explaining a discharge plan to a patient. That was his way, no drama, just instructions for survival. I printed the email chain stored on the USB. The subject line read, "Sale authorization pending spouse consent." Ramsey's reply followed below, "Acknowledged, awaiting signed approval from Mrs. Maura Byron." No such approval existed. I circled the date in red ink, April 5th, 2025, 1 week before Jody's so-called Paris trip. Every muscle in my hand trembled, not from weakness but focus. Each mark was evidence, each page a boundary reasserted. I laid everything out on the dining table, the codicil, the email, the USB. Then I pulled out a manila folder and labeled it Proof of Consent. Inside, I organized the contents with sticky notes. Evidence A, B, C. Grief was supposed to hollow me, but instead it sharpened me. I'd spent a lifetime documenting symptoms, tracking vitals, saving lives in chaos. Now, that discipline was my armor. Grief was supposed to make me weak, I said aloud, but it made me thorough. The phone lit up on the table, Dellen's name flashing across the screen. I didn't answer. I simply watched it buzz until it went dark again. I closed the manila folder, slid it onto the shelf beside Byron's journal, and whispered, "We'll talk when I'm ready." As the afternoon light filtered through the blinds, it struck the folder's label, glowing faintly, like a quiet promise of justice. The phone started ringing again, but I was already planning my next move. The phone kept lighting up after I ignored Jody's call. Instead of picking up, I sent Dellen a short text. "Come by at noon. We'll talk on the porch." Nothing more. No exclamation points. No threats. The wind chimes on the awning outside were already tapping softly, a rhythm steadier than my pulse. The Arizona heat had started early, pressing against the porch screens. I poured water into the bird bath, set out 2 glasses of iced tea, and waited. Before the meeting, I drove to the Glendale branch of the Trust Bank. The teller recognized me from yesterday. I explained I needed certified copies of Box 447's contents, the codicil, notarized, and dated. The manager double-checked the records, confirming the notary's commission was still valid. He offered me embossed copies with the raised seal, each stamped and initialed. "Would you like the visit log printed, Mrs. Byron?" he asked. "Yes, date and time, please." I paid extra for a small fireproof envelope and thanked him. He didn't ask questions, though I could feel his curiosity following me out the door. By the time I reached my car, the documents felt heavier than their weight, paper that could outlast noise. Byron would have approved. Back home, I cleared the kitchen table, wiped it twice, then laid everything out in order: certified codicil, email printout, handwritten notes from the previous day. The manila folder was now an organism, living, growing, organized by logic, each section labeled with a clean tab: A, codicil; B, email; C, timeline. I made a duplicate set, sliding it into an accordion folder for backup. Every sound, the zipper, the click of the binder rings, was deliberate. When my husband died, the house grew too quiet. Now, even small noises had purpose. By the time the clock neared noon, I'd rehearsed what I'd say twice, without emotion, like charting vitals: fact, date, outcome. Dellen's car pulled up right on time. He walked toward the porch with that salesman's smile, sunglasses reflecting the sun. "Hey, Maura," he started lightly. "Jody wanted me to check in. We might have to handle the Paris refunds soon, just paperwork stuff." I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Sit down, Dellen. We'll start with paperwork then." He laughed, assuming this was a peace talk. I slid 1 certified copy of the codicil across the table. "Read the second paragraph." His expression shifted mid-sentence. "Wait, this says that the car couldn't be sold without my written consent." I finished for him. "You handled that transaction?" He hesitated, eyes darting toward the yard. "Let me run this by our lawyer. Maybe it's outdated." I didn't flinch. "It's dated 2 years ago, notarized, verified this morning." He leaned back, sighing through his nose. "Maura, come on. It's just a car." Byron wouldn't have wanted... I interrupted gently. "You're right. He wouldn't have wanted his wishes ignored." Then I slid a small metal tray toward him. On it lay a single house key. "This one comes back today," I said. "No more unscheduled access." He blinked, uncertain whether I was serious. "You're locking us out?" "I'm locking in peace," I replied. He hesitated, then dropped the key onto the tray. The sound was small but final. After he left, I wrote down the time. 12:47 p.m., and every word exchanged. Old nurse habit. Document before you decompress. The porch light flickered once, catching the curve of the key beside today's newspaper. I photographed it for the record. Proof of boundary reclaimed. "Anger wastes oxygen," I murmured. "Paperwork doesn't." The heat began to soften as the sun sank lower. I sat there a while, breathing in the scent of dust and citrus leaves. When evening settled, I gathered the finished evidence packet, sealed it, and slipped it into my tote. Then I opened my laptop and drafted a message. To Marcia L. Hayes, attorney at law. Subject, ready when you are. I attached the PDFs, each file labeled neatly, and watched the printer warm up. The first draft of a demand and preservation notice sliding out, page by page. By the time I turned off the lamp, the house felt less like a place of mourning and more like a command post. By morning, my lawyer would speak in my place. Marcia's email arrived before the light climbed over South Mountain. Subject line, demand to preserve evidence, unauthorized sale attempt. I read it twice, lips moving like I was counting a pulse. The letter was clean as a scalpel. VIN listed, dates stamped, codicil cited, email chain referenced, delivery instructions set. It asked the dealership to halt any transfer, preserve surveillance video, keep all internal communications, and confirm receipt by close of business. There were no adjectives, just... I printed 2 copies, slid one into the manila folder, and forwarded the message to myself and to a cloud drive I finally learned to use. The printer hummed like a steady ventilator. Outside, morning traffic threaded down the cul-de-sac. I rinsed my cup, set a fresh filter, and watched the coffee bloom. When you've worked 40 years in intensive care, you learn to trust procedure over panic. Today would be procedure. I drove to Graves Classic Auto with the packet on the seat beside me. Sun flared off windshields, palms wagged like metronomes. Inside the showroom, polished fenders threw back my reflection, smaller, steady. Ramsey crossed the floor before I reached the desk. "Mrs. Byron," he said, careful. I received counsel's email. We paused everything. "Title is not transferring." "Good," I answered. I handed him the certified copy of the codicil and the demand letter. "Consider this preserved. Please send written confirmation to my attorney. And the video from Saturday, front lot and intake bay." He nodded, throat working. "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry for the situation." I didn't offer a rescue line. "Get me the confirmation." I turned to go, and he didn't stop me. Control had shifted, and no one had raised a voice. Back home, I poured coffee into my favorite white mug, the one with the tiny blue saguaro. As the heat spread, a hairline crack feathered from the rim toward the handle. It wasn't there yesterday. I held it to the window and watched the light find the flaw. Even porcelain remembers pressure, I thought. I set the mug down gently and chose another. My phone rang, Jody's name. I let it ring twice, then answered and tapped record like Marcia taught me. "Mom," she began, sugar in the voice. "We didn't mean for this to go that far. Dylan thought, well, we both thought you didn't even drive it." "That's accurate," I said. It wasn't for tourists. She exhaled, annoyed. You're overreacting. Dad would have wanted me to have it. He told me I understood the aesthetics. I stayed quiet. Silence makes people fill it with truth. She rushed in. You loved that car more than me. I looked at the oil stain in the garage through the window. I loved who your father became because of it. That's not the same. God, you're impossible, she snapped. We already put deposits down. People are watching. If you make this a legal thing, it will embarrass us. It already is a legal thing, I said softly. And public humiliation started with your reel. She went quiet, then colder. So you're choosing a machine over your daughter. I'm choosing boundaries, I said. And your father's written instructions. Fine, she said, brittle. Our lawyer will call. Have him email Marcia, I replied. We'll keep a clean record. Her breath sawed in the speaker. You always take outsiders' sides. I'm taking the side of paper, I said. It doesn't lie about who signed what. She hung up. I saved the audio, labeled it with the date and minute, and sent it to Marcia with a brief note. Call with Jody, escalation, admissions about deposits, and intent. I opened the voicemail bubbles without listening all the way through, only long enough to capture the timestamps. Then I deleted them. Once upon a time, I believed love meant never keeping records. Now I know love also means not letting yourself be edited out. The sun moved across the floor in neat inches. I cleaned the counter, wiped the ring my cracked mug had left, and checked my inbox. Ramsey's reply was there. Title transfer paused, footage being pulled, counsel looped. He added a line that looked like a hand held out at arm's length. We did not realize spouse consent was required. I forwarded it to Marcia, then stacked my packets in order. Court pile, personal copy, fireproof envelope. I walked to the garage and stood in the rectangle of light on the concrete. The stain was a map of years, Byron's Saturdays, our errands, the way he would come in for lunch smelling like oil and orange soap. I let myself stand there for an honest minute. Then I went back inside and opened my notebook. Time of call, tone, phrases used, threats implied. My handwriting was neat because my hands had stopped shaking. The desert light went honey gold. Marcia's name flashed on my phone with a text. Received everything. Tomorrow we file notice with Glendale Court. I stood by the window, looking at the empty driveway that used to frame chrome. It was no longer about the car. It was about being erased and deciding I would not be. On the table. The letterhead looked stark. My name in the body, his in the history. The car tagged by numbers that outlived breath. I smoothed the page with my palm, steady as settling an anxious shoulder, and felt resolve click into place like a seatbelt. I set the folder on my nightstand within easy reach. By morning, my name would be on a court filing and theirs on a response. At 8 sharp. I pushed open the frosted glass door of Marcia's law office, the tote bag heavy in my hand. The scent of coffee and toner filled the quiet room. She greeted me with a smile that wasn't quite casual, the kind professionals give before war. I handed over the folder labeled Proof of Consent. Every page inside was lined, tabbed, and time-stamped. Everything's clean, Marcia said, flipping through the copies. Chain of custody's perfect. You've done half my job for me. I nodded, steady but cold inside. I learned early in the ICU, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. By 8:45, we walked down the courthouse hallway together. The tile floor echoed with the deliberate steps of women who'd both learned not to flinch first. The clerk stamped the packet with a deep thud. Clerk of court, official record. And for a moment, it sounded louder than any argument Jody and I had ever had. Marcia's voice cut through the echo. Once it's filed, it's searchable. That's when people panic. I almost smiled. It wasn't spite, just recognition. When I signed the acknowledgement page, my pen didn't tremble. Byron would have loved the precision of that moment, his old nurse wife understanding paperwork better than her own daughter ever understood her. By noon, my phone began lighting up like a flare. Texts, tags, and screenshots poured in. A car forum in Glendale had posted, "Anyone know about the estate claim on that red Thunderbird? Looks messy." I didn't reply. I just saved every post into a folder labeled Public Record Monitoring. One man wrote, "That car was worth more than a trip to Paris. She's right to fight." Another, "Typical estate drama. They always think no one will check the title." It didn't sting. If anything, it reminded me that silence wasn't invisibility. It was strategy. By 3 o'clock, the real storm broke. Jody's name flashed across my screen again, but this time it was through a social media post. The caption read, "Imagine your own mother suing you over a car, over Dad's memory, over family." The photo attached was an old one, me at the garage years ago, laughing with Byron. She'd cropped him out. The comments came fast. "Poor Jody, money ruins people. She's grieving and give her a break." Then someone asked the question that sliced through it all. "Wait, and if her mom owns the car, why how could she sell it?" That was when I knew Jody hadn't just overplayed her hand. She'd posted proof of her own guilt. I stared at the screen, the desert light flickering against my reflection. You can't lie in print without leaving fingerprints, I thought. By evening, the house was quiet again. I didn't bother turning on the lights. The blinds were half drawn, letting slivers of sun cut across Byron's framed photo. I sat by the window with a notepad and wrote 2 lines in neat, deliberate script. Public record, your truth. Next, damages and restitution. The wind outside carried the sound of chimes, not soft, not gentle, just constant. I placed the note beneath Byron's picture. Our faces reflected together in the glass. His steady, mine resolved. When my phone buzzed again, I almost didn't look. But the message preview read, "Ramsey, dealer. We got served too. You may want to check your email." I exhaled through my nose, a quiet rhythm of vindication. "Let the paperwork speak for me," I said aloud, and the sound felt solid, final. The email arrived just after sunrise. The subject line was short, clinical, court response, counterclaim filed. I clicked it open, watching the spinning icon turn like the second hand of a slow clock. The PDF unfolded in sharp black text, Jody Crow and Dellen Hayes v. Maura Crow, and beneath it, words I never imagined would follow my daughter's name. Interference with rightful inheritance. I didn't flinch. Instead, I printed every page, laid them flat across Byron's old workbench, and began circling falsehoods in red ink. Each circle steadied my breathing. When I reached the line claiming the vehicle was intended as a shared family asset, I whispered to no one. He never said that. By the time the printer cooled, the stack of evidence was taller than the mug beside it. And the calm I felt wasn't peace, it was precision. Marcia leaned over her desk, her glasses glinting against the screen's light. "They're trying to flip your protection clause into intent," she said. "Let them," I replied. Intent was love, not leverage. She smiled faintly, the kind reserved for nurses who know when the patient will make it. "Then we'll file a motion for discovery. We'll request security footage from the dealer, phone records, and correspondence logs. If they forged anything, it'll show." I nodded. Byron used to say engines tell the truth if you know where to listen. Paper does too. We spent another hour dissecting their claim line by line, every phrase they twisted. We straightened. Every accusation became another point of evidence. The law wasn't quick, but it was thorough, and I had learned the value of both. Back home, the house felt like it was holding its breath. The late morning sun cut through the blinds in narrow lines across the floor. I walked to Byron's old fireproof safe, the one he insisted we keep even when digital storage took over everything. Inside the drawer, behind the insurance folders and title copies, was a smaller envelope, my name written in his slanted engineer's script, "For evidence, if needed, B." I opened it slowly. A USB drive lay inside, silver casing etched with one word, vault. Even after all these years, Byron's caution made sense. He was the kind of man who packed 2 spare tires for a 1-hour trip. When I plugged it into my laptop, the screen blinked, then filled with his face. Byron sat in the garage, the red Thunderbird gleaming behind him. His voice was thin but steady. "If you're watching this, it means the car's been questioned." He paused, breathing shallow. "Maura, I kept the title in your name because you earned every piece of this life. The car remains yours as long as you wish. It's not part of probate distribution." My throat closed, not from grief this time, but recognition. He continued, softer now. "Jody loves hard, but she plays cruel when cornered. Protect yourself, even from her pride. This isn't about revenge, it's about respect." When the video ended, I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the reflection of his face frozen on the screen until my coffee went cold. That night, Marcia and I met over video call. The glow from my monitor washed her face pale, but her eyes were sharp. "This could close the case before trial," she said after I uploaded the video to a secure drive. "No," I answered quietly. "Let them see it in Discovery. Let them sweat." Marcia's grin was quick and fierce. "You're learning fast. 40 years of charting vitals taught me something. Pressure reveals truth." I sent her the time-stamped link, cross-referenced with the court file number. Byron's voice was now a piece of the record. His foresight turned into my shield. Before bed, I walked to the garage and locked the safe again. Moonlight spilled through the small window, glinting off the steel drawer. "He built engines that lasted decades," I murmured. "Now he's building my case." The garage was empty, but it didn't feel hollow anymore. Just waiting, like the pause before ignition. The next day, Discovery began, and with it, the unraveling. At exactly 9:02 a.m., Marcia and I logged into the Glendale court portal. The screen glowed pale blue in the morning light spilling through her office blinds. My name and Jody's appeared side by side, divided by a single gray line that read, "Discovery Exchange, active." Below it, the uploaded files blinked into view. Dealership documents, scanned receipts, and 2 labeled video clips. My breath steadied. This was no longer emotion. It was data. Marcia clicked the first file. The screen expanded to a grainy security camera feed from March 28, 2025. Timestamp 217 me, a counter, a clerk, the signature pad, and then my daughter. Jody, leaning forward with a practiced smile. She wrote my name in confident strokes. Dellen stood beside her, sliding a document across, whispering something that made her laugh. Marcia froze the frame. "That's a felony," she said quietly. I leaned closer. "It's also my handwriting they tried to copy. I'd train nurses to recognize forged charts. People's pulse when they're lying shows up in the spacing between letters. Jody's spacing was too perfect. She'd rehearsed it. The image burned itself into my mind, but I stayed still, pen already moving. I wrote the timestamp, the camera angle, the clerk's badge number. Evidence first, reaction later. By the time the clip ended, the air in Marcia's office felt heavier. She picked up her phone. "We're filing a notice of fraudulent representation immediately," she said. "They just crossed into criminal exposure." "They already did," I replied. This only proves they weren't careful enough. That afternoon, I helped her draft the filing. The hum of the copier filled the silence. We highlighted VIN details, dealership logo placement, reflection angles, tiny truths that lawyers love and liars forget. The more I looked, the calmer I became. Every betrayal has fingerprints. The second clip finished uploading. I braced myself, but this wasn't video. It was a PDF contract. The signature field labeled Owner's Spouse Consent glowed faintly. Next to it, Dellen's digital signature shimmered in cheap bravado. Marcia pulled metadata. Same IP as their home router, she said. 1 minute after Jody signed hers. I traced the screen's reflection with my fingertip. Even deceit leaves a trail, I murmured. If you've ever loved an honest man. Marcia looked up. You sound almost sorry for them. I'm not. I'm just aware they've mistaken my silence for surrender. By sunset, she'd scheduled a pre-trial conference. I drafted a short personal statement, 1 sentence only. I prefer truth to apologies. I printed it on Byron's old stationery, the kind with faint grease stains in the corner from his workshop. Driving home, I passed the dealership. The neon sign flickered red and white against the glass. Empty, sterile, loud. It no longer looked like betrayal, just another place that underestimated me. When I reached my driveway, I unlocked Byron's safe one more time and tucked the USB labeled Vault inside my purse. I ran my hand along the cool metal of the drawer, whispering to the air. He built engines that lasted decades. Now he's building my case. The house was quiet except for the soft tick of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator. I poured a small glass of water, set it beside the folder labeled Discovery Evidence, and watched the desert moon flicker on the garage door. Tomorrow. They'd face me across a conference table, and the footage would play on loop. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon polish and anxiety. I walked in beside Marcia, my lawyer, while the others were already seated around the glass table. Across from us sat Jody and Dellen, dressed too formally for the desert heat. Ramsey from the dealership sat off to the side, hands folded, his eyes politely neutral. I placed my folder, thin, organized, final, on the table in front of me. My hands didn't tremble this time. The judge hadn't ordered us here. This was a pre-trial opportunity for resolution, as the notice called it. Resolution. What a lovely word for a wound that never stopped reopening. The meeting began with procedure. The opposing counsel, a young man with slick hair and a smile too polished to be sincere, outlined the agenda. We'll review the materials from discovery, confirm authenticity, and discuss potential settlement paths. Marcia didn't bother with pleasantries. We watch first, she said. We talk second. Her voice could have cut glass. Someone dimmed the lights. The monitor at the end of the table flickered to life, displaying the timestamp, March 28th, 2025, 2:17. There they were, my daughter and her husband, standing at the dealership counter. I watched Jody pick up a pen and write my name in deliberate, uneven strokes. Dellen leaned in, murmured something I couldn't hear, then slid the page forward. The sales clerk smiled politely, unaware that a crime was unfolding under fluorescent light. My eyes stayed on the screen. I refused to look at my daughter sitting 6 feet away. When the clip ended, Marcia pressed pause. For the record, she said, the signature presented as Maura Avery does not match my client's legal handwriting. Timestamp and camera angle confirm forgery. Opposing counsel shifted. We believe it was a misunderstanding, perhaps a joint account confusion. Ramsey cleared his throat. Our dealership policy requires both parties to appear in person for any title transfer. Mrs. Avery wasn't there. His tone carried the quiet weight of truth. The stainless steel carafe on the table reflected a small red light. Rikikes. The Polycom was recording everything, even the silence. Then came the next file. Metadata displayed on screen, e-sign upload, Dellin Crowell, 218p. 1 minute after Jody's handwriting had touched the page, Marcia leaned forward. That 1 minute matters. It proves intent, coordination, and concealment. The opposing lawyer tried to recover, muttering something about an accidental upload, but I could feel the shift, the current in the room pulling away from them. We took a short recess. The air conditioner hummed while the lawyers whispered in separate corners. The red light on the Polycom stayed on. That's when Jody hissed, thinking no one could hear her. "I told you to upload it from your phone, not the apartment Wi-Fi." The words slid across the speakers like glass breaking in slow motion. Every head turned toward her. The red light blinked twice, still recording. I didn't look up. I simply wrote the sentence on my legal pad, word for word, as if charting vitals in a hospital room. When the session resumed, the other attorney's voice had lost its polish. He offered, almost too quickly, to resolve this privately. Return of the vehicle, withdrawal of the counterclaim, and no further comment online. Marcia didn't smile. "Return is the floor," she said, "not the ceiling." Jody's gaze darted toward me, searching for the mother who used to comfort her after bad dreams. I wasn't that woman anymore. I spoke once, clearly. "You don't get to erase me and keep the pen." Silence settled like dust after an explosion. I gathered my folder and stood. The negotiation would continue in writing, not words. As we left the building, sunlight flashed off the downtown windows, bright and unsparing. Marcia's phone buzzed with a message from the court clerk. "They've given us an early settlement conference," she said, scanning the screen. "Monday morning." I exhaled slowly. "By Monday," I said. "This won't be a meeting, it'll be a record." The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and dusted marble polish. Morning light streamed through the high windows, turning every pane of glass into something holy and severe. Marcia walked beside me, calm as ever, and Ramsey followed carrying a slim folder. I'd already had my coffee, already decided there would be no trembling today. After all the weeks of build-up, the hallways felt strangely quiet, like the moments before a storm gives up and turns into rain. Inside the settlement room, everything looked sterile. Beige table, water carafe, digital clock ticking loud enough to hear my pulse. The opposing counsel greeted us with a nod. Jody sat 2 seats away, her eyes hidden behind sunglasses even though the room had no sun. Dellin whispered something to her, but she didn't answer. The first folder slid across the table. It bore the court seal, embossed in blue. My name was printed at the top, Maura Jameson, formerly Whitaker, the car's title reinstated under my maiden name. I didn't smile. I just let the paper sit between us, the key fob resting on top, Byron's initials engraved in silver. The attorney cleared his throat. "Ownership restored. Transfer recorded at 8:07 a.m. I nodded. That was all. No handshake. No sigh. Marcia leaned toward me, whispering. They blinked first. Then came the next document, a printed statement, 2 paragraphs, ready for public posting. The court required it for the record. I'd required it for my peace. Jody's hand shook as she lifted it. "I acted without authorization," she began, voice low and cracking. "I misrepresented ownership of property belonging to my mother, Maura Jameson. I apologize publicly for my actions." She stopped once, swallowed, then forced out the last line. "This correction replaces all previous posts and claims." The silence that followed was almost tender. Even Marcia's pen clicking to close felt ceremonial. For once, I didn't look at my daughter. Watching her crumble wouldn't heal me. Hearing the truth spoken aloud already had. When the papers were signed, the judge's clerk collected them into a neat pile and stamped each one. The sound echoed through the small conference room. Final. Outside. The desert wind whipped through the courthouse plaza, scattering dry leaves along the steps. Jody fled first, head down, heels clattering on the pavement. Dylan lingered, saying nothing. I walked past them both without slowing, sunlight flashing off the courthouse doors like a shield I no longer needed to lift. By evening, Ramsey sent a text with a screenshot. Jody's accounts had gone dark. Her boutique's page vanished. The friends who'd cheered her trip to Paris unfollowed in silence. I didn't gloat. Grief and pride had started to feel like the same muscle, tight, tired, but still working. In the garage, I stood beside the Thunderbird. Its red paint caught the dusk, soft and deep, like breathing after too long underwater. I started the engine. It turned over on the first try, steady and alive. The glove box clicked open as I reached for a tissue, and a small envelope slid out, yellowed around the edges. Byron's handwriting. For when you're ready to drive alone, I read it twice, then folded it back, my hands no longer shaking. He'd built the car for memory. I kept it for meaning. As the sun dipped below the mountains, I drove through the streets of Phoenix, the engine humming under my palms. At the first red light, I looked in the rearview mirror. The courthouse sat far behind me, small and still, like an ending written in lowercase. The car was mine again, but this time, so was the silence. The envelope sat in the mailbox like it had been waiting for me to come home. Thick, beige, stamped with the red logo of State Farm Claims Division. I held it under the light filtering through the blinds, the air still and golden, carrying that quiet hum of late afternoon when time itself seems to pause. It wasn't fear I felt anymore, just a slow curiosity, the kind that comes after too many storms. I opened the flap carefully, slid the contents onto the table. The check inside gleamed with its printed amount, far higher than what Marcia had estimated for the property loss weeks ago. Attached to it was a single-page note, stapled at the corner. Restoration Endowment Policy, established by Byron Jameson 12 years prior. Beneficiary, Maura Jameson. Clause. Non-transferable, to remain valid only under her ownership. My breath caught. I touched the line again with my finger, tracing each word like a prayer. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock and, outside, the soft clinking of the old wind chime Byron had made from carburetor parts. The sound had followed me through every season of our marriage, annoying once, comforting now. I called the insurance agent, a woman named Carla, whose voice carried the kind of warmth that comes from seeing too many widows before breakfast. He must have known something might happen, she said gently. It's rare. This kind of policy. It was designed for restoration projects that held sentimental value. He protected both the car and you. Her words hung there, gentle but heavy. I walked out to the porch, letter in hand, the desert wind pulling at my hair. The chime jingled faintly again, and I imagined Byron's laugh under it, low, amused, proud of himself for planning one last safety net, the kind of thing he would have done and never mentioned, because love for him was quiet and procedural, like a checklist he'd already completed. By late afternoon, I was on the Red Canyon Road. The car moved smooth beneath me, every gear shift soft as breath. Sedona spread out before me, vast and burning with color, sandstone cliffs glowing orange against a sky so blue it looked painted. I rolled down the window and let the desert air rush in. The drive felt like a memory replaying itself. Our Sunday trips to nowhere. Byron's hand on the gear shift. Our arguments over road maps. The way we'd sit in silence for miles until one of us laughed first. Every sound, the hum of the tires, the whistle of air through the vent, became a kind of conversation we were still having. When I reached the overlook, I parked facing the horizon. The sun was sinking behind the ridges, throwing gold onto the windshield. I turned off the engine. For a long moment, I didn't move. Then, slowly, I pulled the keychain from the ignition, the one with the small silver tag engraved B. I stepped out and walked toward the edge of the cliff, the gravel crunching under my shoes. Hanging low from a crooked branch was a single dry twig, and on impulse, I looped the keychain over it. The wind caught it, turning it gently in the light. "You built it to last, Byron," I whispered. "Now let it rest." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. I walked back down the path, hands empty. Behind me, the Thunderbird gleamed in the dying light. A relic, yes, but also a testament. I didn't turn around again. The sound of the wind filled the silence where grief used to live. By the time I reached home, the desert was cooling. The porch light flickered on automatically, welcoming me without effort. I hung my jacket by the door, placed the insurance letter on the counter, and glanced at the wind chimes swaying outside the window. That night, for the first time in months, I left the window open. The air smelled faintly of sagebrush and motor oil, old and new lives mixed together. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, long and low, and I smiled, not in sorrow, but in recognition. That night, I finally slept with the window open. Monday morning, sunlight filtered across my kitchen table when the call came. Ramsey's voice was steady, almost ceremonial. "The Arizona Automotive Heritage Museum has accepted your proposal. Mrs. Bennett, long-term loan. Title remains in your name." For a moment, I just breathed. The idea had started as a whisper, a way to keep the car safe without keeping it too close. I looked at the pen hovering over the form beside me, the little box marked loan next to another that read donate. My hand didn't shake this time. Continuity without custody. Byron would have liked that. That afternoon, I arranged transport from the Sedona Overlook where the car had rested for weeks. The carrier would arrive tomorrow. Watching the confirmation email blink on my laptop, I realized this was the first practical choice I'd made purely for myself since he died. At Marcia's office the next morning, the paperwork felt almost weightless. We signed the museum loan agreement, then filed the documents to establish the Byron and Maura Bennett Apprenticeship Fund at Glendale Community College. The insurance payout from Byron's old restoration policy would become an endowment for first-generation auto tech students. Tool stipends, tuition aid, maybe even a used car to practice on someday. "If a car taught us patience," I said, my pen gliding over the final line, "maybe it can also buy someone time." Marcia smiled. "That's a beautiful kind of justice." I left her office with an empty briefcase and a light heart. That evening, I wrote one last letter, this one to Jody. It was one page, no bitterness, no indulgence. I wrote, "You are still my daughter, but reconciliation requires repair, not repetition. 3 conditions, typed in clear: therapy completion, restitution plan. Written amends without public posting? Love without rescue." I sealed it with a small circular sticker, one Byron used to mark organized parts bins in the garage, silver with the faint imprint of a wrench. Boundaries, finally built on grace instead of silence. Saturday arrived sharp and bright. The museum rotunda smelled faintly of wax and old leather, beneath soft lights. The Thunderbird sat gleaming, a time capsule on wheels. The plaque read, Byron Bennett's 1963 Thunderbird, restored across decades, entrusted to family and future hands. When they handed me the microphone, I didn't make a speech about loss or betrayal. I talked about quiet work, how patience could be an act of love, and how some legacies weren't inherited, but practiced. When I announced the apprenticeship fund, the applause came softly, like respect. Not spectacle. Near the back, Jody stood motionless. No tears, no scene. She slipped out before the end. And that was enough. 2 students approached afterward, nervous and sincere. Mrs. Bennett, one said, "We'll take good care of what you started." Their voices shook the way Byron's used to when pride overwhelmed him. After the crowd thinned, I stood alone beside the Thunderbird. My reflection curved along its hood. I touched the steering wheel once, just once, and felt the cool leather under my palm. "You never left me a map," I whispered. "You left me tools." From my pocket, I pulled an empty key ring. I hooked it beneath the dash, hidden but there. A gesture for myself, memory without possession. In the foyer, a young man with oil-stained hands approached shyly. "Mrs. Bennett," he said. "My dad was a mechanic. He didn't get to see me graduate." I handed him a small card. "Then let's make sure you have what you need." He nodded, clutching it as if it were heavier than any diploma. I realized then the car wasn't the legacy. People were. That evening, I rode back to Sedona with the window half open. The desert wind hummed through the carpool lane, carrying the faint chime I'd hung outside weeks ago. I listed what I kept, the name on the title, the fund's first class, and the right to peace. The road ahead stretched long and amber, quiet except for the whisper of air through glass. The road ahead is quiet, finally, and this time, I'm at the wheel. Sometimes, peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from knowing when to stop fighting. When I look back now, I realize Byron's greatest gift wasn't the car. It was the reminder that what we build with love can outlast betrayal, if we protect it with dignity. I learned that silence isn't surrender. It's strength guided by purpose. Maybe you faced something similar, a family rift, a moment when you had to choose between being right and being at peace. What would you have done? Would you have let go or held on? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone you love, please tap subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. Every story opens a door, and I'd love to know which one this opened for you.